Low test. Devin, are you ready? Okay, this is going to be the recording for NeXT Intellect Module 1, Lesson 7, AI Risks, Ethics, and Limitations. Introduces responsible AI use. Let me make sure I was sharing the screen. I do not think I was. Okay. Pathway overview. This lesson introduces students to the critical importance of using AI responsibly. You will learn about bias, which is unfair treatment built into AI systems, privacy concerns, protecting personal information, and accuracy limits, understanding when AI makes mistakes. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to identify potential risks in AI applications and apply ethical thinking to your own AI work. The workforce targets are to be able to define bias, privacy, and accuracy in the context of AI systems, identify real-world examples of bias in AI applications, explain how AI systems can fail and what limitations they have, describe the ethical responsibilities of AI practitioners, apply privacy-first thinking when working with data and prompts, recognize when AI should not be used for a given task, develop a personal framework for responsible AI decision making. Our key vocabulary is bias, privacy, accuracy, ethics, limitation, transparency, accountability, training data, algorithm, stakeholder. So for the live build demonstration, think of an AI system that you use daily, such as a recommendation algorithm on social media or a phone's autocorrect. What could go wrong with it and who might be affected? So for this one, recommendation algorithms in like Netflix, Amazon, things like that. I mentioned the other day that I've had before it recommend movies. I like to watch horror movies, and it might recommend that in like a family section on my Amazon or something. So it could have things that would be in the wrong place that how who might be affected, something maybe a kid certain age shouldn't see. Maybe music recommendations in like Spotify, the algorithm might go way off base and recommend something because it saw some pattern and it might be something that you do not like at all or have no interest in. If an AI system denies someone a loan or a job interview, who should be responsible if it was unfair? The company, the AI developers, or the AI itself? This would all depend on what data did it use to come to the conclusion that the person shouldn't get the job or the loan. So there's bias in systems that have been found before in AI where it could deny someone a loan of living in a certain zip code, and in that zip code there might be more people with might be increased poverty, there might happen to be more people that are delinquent on making payments, and then it can't make that generalization right for a whole group of people and single somebody out because of that. So the question would be then who's responsible? Was that the data that was given in the training by the developers? Okay. Is the company responsible for looking at outputs and checking them for bias? So it could be across the board. And we did just mention in the previous lesson that even AI itself got to keep looking at because it could take in real world data that could influence it, that could introduce bias even after the system has been live and maybe it's been going fine for a while. So it's something you have to constantly be checking for.
Well, could the AI actually be unfair if and only if it was? I thought the AI supposed to only judge everything by the keywords.
Keywords from like a resume.
Uh huh.
Yeah, it depends on the system. Like the application tracker systems, yeah, are going heavy on the keyword, so that makes it, fair across the board. That if somebody has that skill and they put it down that was required, then it meets a check mark and has it. You got to make sure it doesn't have bias in the system that for some reason it's going to be more favorable to somebody with like the name John than somebody with the name like Sally. And we'll see examples of that when there have been systems that help suggest who should be hired, and from interviews and everything. And they've had unfair and had bias in systems before in the past in like tech sectors for jobs because the data it's trained on that would have been primarily male industries for a while were the majority, and so then it might favor male applicants over female, so you have to watch out with the historical data that it's trained on. And so that would go into sex and race and all that of who had been in that like industry before. And so it would need to see examples of same thing with like if you get AI to generate a way that you could see bias in it, ask it to in an image generator to create an image of a doctor, right? And see how many times do you get a male and if it's a white male or not, and then how many times would it generate a female? It might be more likely to generate a male thinking of a doctor with that stereotype.
Yeah. But I was asking about the keywords because if it's based on keywords and stuff like that, then the keywords should be aligned according to only and only to the job description, not John, Sally, or address or location, even schools. And so,
Yeah, that's what
uh,
they would have to in the fair system, right? Is just making sure that it's going by those keywords, yeah, and it's not making any determinations based on somebody's address of saying, hey, they come from like an area that has
so
higher
if
crime.
Inglewood address pop up, does it kick it back out because it's called Inglewood? But you look at the rest of the qualifications.
Yeah, and that's why people, a lot of times it's not required, usually not suggested to have the address on there anyway, because we know that the data could get leaked and you don't need everybody knowing where you live. It needs to be making the determination when it's through the applicant tracker system based on did you meet the requirements that they had posted and looking at keywords. And that's what we're saying needs to be fair, that it's not trying to make inferences based on your name or what state you live in and things like that. So, have you ever noticed that an AI system seemed to assume something wrong about you or your interest? We talked about this in a call with just me and you that this has happened to us, that it might take for uh, a salutation that you've used before and it might start saying God bless you. Since you personally use that, the AI could start using that, and you might not want it to use it in that context. And then I've had it know that I'm in Mississippi and use like little Southern sayings and stuff before. And I was like, whoa, I never asked you to do that or to give me an analogy, that you would normally hear, sweating like a hog and things like that. I was like, I didn't tell you to start talking like that.
I have said my AI use y'all.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so then that's when you tell it too. If it does start making some assumption about you and change the way that it's communicating, you could tell it, whoa, 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 that's not what I'm looking for. And be specific on if you're wanting it to kind of talk in a non-regional dialect and all that. If it gets too casual in the communication back and forth, yeah, you could let it know how you want that to be. And then we've referenced why it's important that rules in place for people's personal data, because ultimately we don't want people's personal data getting out where it's not supposed to be, and that's happened with not just AI companies and systems, but companies in general have had leaks and stuff, and people's data get out, and it hurts the trust in that company and everything. There's repercussions for it that people might get their identity stolen, things. So, of course, a lot of rules have to be in place on protecting people's private data. It does say, even though ChatGPT will tell you, when you're putting in a separate in a chat and it's not a public thing, that it's private, but it still says that things in any AI tool like that still could be leaked. And who knows if it would spit it out as treat it like something new, like maybe it creates for somebody else writing a Matthew Harris, that lives in Batesville, Mississippi, and it's really, pulling from data that knows about me. You never
Hmm.
know if it's something that you created, Devin, right? If that's actually based on a real person or not. So it is possible that it could reuse sometimes, especially we'll get to when it has a hallucination and doesn't know an answer and just generates a response or something that's false as if it's true. It could just kind of regurgitate some information that it does have. So today we explore the flip side of AI, what can go wrong, and how to use it responsibly. So we're looking at three concepts: bias, privacy, and accuracy. So bias, which we've mentioned, means an AI system treats some group of people unfairly or produces results that favor certain groups over others. And groups could be like a culture group of thing. It could be race, could be sex, could be age groups. It could be any type of different group you could think. Bias, though, does not happen by accident. It gets built in during training. So the data that was given to it, even if it was not intentional to cause harm, it just happens to be the data they had, could lead to bad outcomes of not being fair to others. Now, if somebody did put in data that reflects any sort of human prejudice, then it could repeat that prejudice.
Yeah.
So an example would be a hiring AI. If it was trained on past hiring decisions that favored men, it would likely recommend men for those jobs, even if women are equally qualified. So that's what they had to work on in making better and giving it examples of women in some of these positions, and knowing that the past data, even if it was more examples of a certain group, that didn't mean that the others were not qualified. And ultimately, that's the point in getting better and preventing it, is recognizing it in the first place. So a famous example that was a real world example was Amazon built an AI to screen job applications, but discovered it downgraded women because the training data came from male dominated tech roles. So, of course, tech roles were more um, positions that males held in the past, and now that's rising. In MCA, our statistics on that, we had like 30 something percent female participants, which is way higher than it's been in the past of females in technology. And now we have more females getting in tech because you have initiatives in schools like STEM that'll specifically do things. Sometimes we had in Louisville, Mississippi, a STEM like a girl event, and getting more girls when they're young interested in things like tech and getting into fields that maybe they weren't exposed to in the past. That'll lead to, more data of people being in those type of jobs, what it'll lead to outcomes in the data that it would be more fair for all. So Susie, it's not gonna, if she gets the AI to help her with some ideas for a job, based on her skills, you don't want it telling her that she needs to be something that was typically a role that maybe a mother would do. Yeah, saying, okay, you're going to be this, or, like a teacher or a secretary, some of the old things that were kind of more female than male. Another example, facial recognition systems perform worse on people with darker skin tones because they were trained mostly on lighter skinned faces. And so that's happened in a bunch of instances when we had the study previously that we saw with facial recognition. It might be that you only had examples of maybe you were able to use what for people's privacy. Are you using your own people in your company, and then people that did give their images of their face to be used for it, and then and signed off on it. So you might have been limited on your pool of people and where you're at. Maybe if you had people in your company that were white, black, and Hispanic, and you didn't have anybody else represented, then how well is it going to pick up their skin tone? And so that's something you have to consider.
Well, you said that I think about actually how that can actually be another level of racism exposed, even though they they preaching diversity.
Hmm.
Had they been got caught, look, man, you say you like diversity, but look at all you people,
Hmm.
and because all the people that's doing this had to be able to lie to you. You telling me you like diversity, but even the black folks look almost white.
Yeah.
So you
It
know,
comes,
so
yeah, you're getting them to practice what they preach. Yeah, if you're seeing diversity in the data and it's leading to is, and we don't know, is this facial recognition system being used in, is it leading to people getting hired? This might be something that is helping with things like recommendations. So it could be things that aren't so serious, like music and or skincare, things like that. So we don't know exactly what they're being used for. Obviously, it's higher stakes when it comes to like somebody getting a job or not.
and I tell you like this, you talk about voice recognition. Well, what about voice feedback? A lot of the voice feedback, you have very, very few of African American anything that's black voice feedback.
Are you talking about anytime you get like the AI to speak, and if you're getting
Like
it to,
Alexa, anybody.
yeah, yeah, that's a good example of, yeah, there probably haven't been enough examples of black males and females and the voices, to be given to it. That would be like, you would think of definitely like Morgan Freeman, that voice. You hear voices like it sometimes, and James Earl Jones. So yeah, if you got it to be like, oh yeah, some prominent figures, but yeah, obviously it needs to hear more voices of different groups, because you do normally, the main thing is it's going to be wanting to present the people probably give feedback on which voices they prefer to went in. So if it spoke English, did it speak it clearly, and they were able to understand like the dialect and stuff, because that comes down to your preference. My wife flipped our GPS one time to like an Irish lady,
Hmm.
and she was saying all these words that are regional areas in Mississippi, right? In ways that I was like, well, I don't really know what she's saying. So I'm like, we don't need to use this.
Well, I put it like this because they didn't have many examples, and that's one thing I find uniquely when you bring that up. Because on Google, they don't have one, but they have one in a Nigerian voice. So my lady is a Nigerian,
Okay.
and so she is speaking in that old Queen English Nigerian voice, and you be like, "Ten laugh, do this," and then like you say, sometimes you speak at a rate that I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, what did you just say?" Because
Yeah.
guess what? I don't speak that language. I don't speak that type of Queen English.
Hmm. So of course, a high stakes thing like a bank's loan approval or approval on like a mortgage for a home, you would definitely want to make sure it wasn't any bias on people from certain neighborhoods, reflecting historical discrimination. So those are things that you have to look out for, and especially when it leads to serious consequences for someone's life. So in that case, I mean, not getting a house when they needed to, not getting a loan when they really needed the money, um, could be a lot more serious than their music recommendation, right, or their Netflix movie recommendation.
Hmm.
So privacy risks. Of course, we want our personal information to be safe and secret. You know, everybody has that right to privacy. Now, we sign things away when we don't read fine print on stuff, so there are times that they're telling us they're using it, and then we hear of leaks all the time and everything. So, kind of being the safe on it, if it's not required on some form by your work or something, it's like a personal thing. You choose to put what you want, and if it's asking for too much and saying it's required, then you might not want to fill it out. And then just knowing anything that's put on the internet in some place, no matter how secure it is, that there's times that things get leaked, that it could become public at some point. So AI systems often need data to work. So your search history, location, purchases, or medical records. Every time you share this data with an AI system, there's a risk it could be stolen, misused, or sold. So that would be the danger of people giving their medical information to like ChatGPT or Gemini to tell it for what what you're dealing with, and if it has all the previous things, because the different chats you've had with it, maybe it does have your address, um, name, all these other things. Hopefully, you've never put a social security number in there, but then you start saying, "Oh, maybe I'm hypertension and pre-diabetic and all these things." Well, okay, what type of feedback is it giving you based on, we don't say, is it pulling from large groups of people and populations to give you just good solid medical advice, but just knowing that when you're starting to put that stuff in there, if it could be used for something else. um, we know that when someone mentions something and then it pops up in your recommendations or in your in ads and things, that's because it's picking up listening to other people, and what you say, and somebody mentions like pizza or something, then you're likely to get a pizza ad in the near future. So just knowing all this data is always being consumed, and they could keep up with your search history and stuff, and all the stuff in your cache on your computer, so that way it gets more tailored on the things that are suggested to you, and you have some control over that of when you allow apps to see your location and things like that, and what do you allow. So it's just to be mindful of what you allow it to have, and then what you willingly give it, just knowing that it could be leaked. So that was the thing. It said the danger of ChatGPT, even in your own private chat. What if it repeated that information, you know, as output to somebody else? It's possible.
Hmm.
So, as an AI practitioner, you must ask, do I really need this data? Who will see it? And how will it be protected? So maybe the good thing is, if you were wanting to rely on it to give you some, say, some things you were dealing with, if somebody didn't have the money to go see it, because it tells you it's not a doctor and it's not liable for giving medical advice and all that, but it's trained on a lot of that information, has access, and you could tell it, hey, you are a nurse practitioner with the knowledge set in this, this, and this, and tell it symptoms you're having. Well, you don't know. Okay, yeah, it might give you as accurate of things for remedies and some over-the-counter medicines you do, and maybe somebody needs to use that because they don't have money to go to the doctor at the moment. So that's a very real problem, that people don't always have money to go to the doctor. But so maybe in that case, you do it as a hypothetical and say like a person named John Smith, right? And give it the information that you're having. So then that way, if it ever got repeated, it's not saying that you have these things and you're concerned about what you should do with high blood pressure and things like that.
I guess the advantage of that when you talk about medical wise, well, is percentage of error can actually be very low because uh, medical papers and other things are like that.
Hmm.
Even scholastic writers are all public information.
Yeah, that's the thing that people say, oh, you don't need to use it for that and to rely on like helping you maybe do a like self-diagnose using the AI. But yeah, it can pull from all these public records and have a lot more capacity than right one human would have. So yeah, you would potentially have higher accuracy in diagnosis. Um, we know
And then
that
you have to think about it in the medical industry, just like among the computer industry, there's a lot of peer reviews. So if somebody
mhm,
diagnosed something, that also what that becomes public information too. So
right.
the margin of error for that it can be very low. But I've noticed, like you said, when you prompt it, then you have to tell it go through the peer reviews and
Hmm.
go to these specific sites because, like I said, they're all public information. There's nothing private about it. So they go to the specific site, research this exact word, and tell me what's going on.
Hmm.
And they will bring up all the peer reviews and everything. And so I think that is a kind of a fear because of the accuracy of it. That yeah, I don't have to go to the doctor when I can sit right here on my chat and it tell me
Yeah.
exactly what the doctor gonna tell me anyway.
You're just not going to get that prescription that you need without going to the doctor. But there are more healthcare places I've seen that are starting to use AI and stuff. You know, there's telehealth where you meet with someone on camera. So maybe that'll be the future of interacting with the AI health bot that gets you so far to the thing and that information shared live with your primary care doctor so then they can actually see it and much quicker turnout of people going through and being like, okay, this person, it looks like there's a high chance that they need this and maybe they require less camera time or in person. Okay, that was that slide. So never pasting personal information like names, addresses, or health into a public AI tool. If you work with sensitive data at a job, use only approved secure systems. You definitely don't want to lose your job over it. Always read a platform's privacy policy before using it. Be honest with users about what data you are collecting and why. Remember that just because you can collect data does not mean that you should. Privacy protection builds trust and is often required by law. And now accuracy is the output it gives you. How often are the answers correct or the output as close to what you were looking for? So no AI is perfect. Even the best systems make mistakes. I've had it make mistakes in all the different ones that I've used, and you give it feedback. Sometimes it'll keep making the same mistake, and you just have to completely restart over from scratch in a conversation of what you're wanting it to do. So just note if it was one trained to diagnose diseases, it might miss a rare condition, right? That it's never seen before that doesn't have as much, like you said, peer reviews on it. Maybe there's not as much research. A language model might confidently state false facts as if they were true. So I've seen this in Chat GPT, and that's called a hallucination. So it might tell you 2 plus 2 is 3 and tell you that that's 100% true, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you would be like, whoa, no, it's 4. And then it would probably be like, oh, yeah, you're right, my bad. So yeah, you'll see facts sometimes where it might put Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue, and it might be a year that's way different than 1492. It might be 2000 something, and so whenever it's pulling from the data that it has and information, there's times that something caused it to glitch in it, and it's really wanting to give you output. So it might just put together, it's predicting what the next word is. So it might be right, but that one word it messed up made all the world a difference, or that term, so say the year, or maybe it wasn't Christopher Columbus. It was like Christopherson or something.
I,
Put a different person in it. But I've had it do that with what was the math. Sometimes you have to really go back and still check it with the calculator because we were doing it with like Dungeons and Dragons. You would think
mm-hmm.
it should be able to do simple math on like certain roles if it's going to just add something to an attack or defense, somebody's stats in a thing, and then you find out like it didn't even do that right. So you kind of learn not to. You're like, oh, I don't really trust it 100% doing basic math sometimes. And then another trying to think of another one that was recent. Have you had it have a hallucination where it gave you something off the wall of whatever you were asking it to create, whether image generation or text?
Now, every generation now until they approved, it was crazy. And
Yeah,
I be
especially if
just
it gives you
accurate.
something.
And I was like, why did you keep? And I asked, I said, why do you keep doing that?
Yeah, because if it's way off for, I mean, even though we're not dealing with facts then, but we're dealing closer to what you asked for. So if you wanted to generate an image of like, even if it's not logical, say like a purple cat, right? Because maybe it's in a children's book. Well, if it generated, right, even a cat with a normal color, I mean, it didn't follow your prompt and it also was off on what the output was supposed to be.
Oh,
And then, but then you might have pixels that are all over the place, and there's nothing that looks like a cat in the image. That would be when you're getting close to hallucination. It gives you like an image of a mountain, right? And you're like, and especially if it states it as true that here's your image of your purple cat, right? And you're looking at an image of a mountainscape, you're like, whoa, this is not what you were supposed to create. And that can
I
happen.
give a good example. You talk about that. Um, okay, so in my book, if I asked you for Cerberus, what would you think about Cerberus?
Oh yeah, I saw your image on another thing. So yeah, you would think classically uh probably a black dog three-headed and more scary, intimidating, and then you think of things like Harry Potter. I think of that dog in it. But
As,
you have one that's on the different side of it that's like a dog that is playful and friendly looking.
and it will not color. And it has a problem because Cerberus white.
Yeah,
It gave me the most difficult time. If it turned it down white, it tried to add an extra leg. And so if I try to change the head of Cerberus, it would add stuff. And I'm like, no, just change the head. But for some odd reason, the AI would never pick up, or I don't know what exactly was wrong with it. But when you say it be off, it was just way off.
yeah.
Like the middle head is a female, and the two outside heads are males.
Hmm.
And so it had a difficulty of actually trying to get the image to download it. Now it got some ChatGPT image or something like that. It's a little bit more improved. They don't give me as much problems. But originally, man, it gave me the blues when it gave me Cerberus.
And I wonder if the problem, because of course you're thinking it's tying just like we did to thinking what that comes to mind, and then it's coming up with all the data that it has stored on like Cerberus, okay, and people have painted in images. So who knows? Maybe it would have been better to prompt it to not use the word Cerberus. Maybe if you got it to create a dog that had three heads that was white and gave very specific things and maybe never mentioned Cerberus and see if the result was any better that time.
And then start giving them extra legs. And I'm like, I just want 3 heads and 4 legs.
Right,
I mean,
right.
I let her say, give me 4 legs. It give me
Hmm.
5, 6 every time.
That's something novel, right? That's a good real world example of you asking it something and based on its data, if it only thinks that dogs have one head, right? Because it's not
Uh-huh.
thinking of fantasy, then it's thrown off. It's like, well, I don't know what a three-legged, I mean, a three-headed dog, how many legs it would have. And you're telling me four, but it's not considering what you're, it's just like, okay, well, let me try to make the right call now based on what I have. And then, yeah, it could get stuck in that too, where you're giving it feedback and it still keeps giving you like the hand situation. A hand could be weird, tell it needs to look realistic, and it could be caught in that and sometimes not get it right. We've kind of gotten past that now that Gemini and things, and you think most of the time hands look pretty good now. I always look at them to make sure, but just 2, 3 years back was when they were all over the place. And I'm sure you've seen the big one for accuracy and showing how it's progressed with video generation is Will Smith eating spaghetti. I'll have to add that in some of the slides. So Will Smith eating spaghetti was a thing people got it to create, and you see some old ones that are all glitchy and all that, and then it gets to the point where it looks more like the real deal. So understanding accuracy means knowing when to trust AI and when to double check its work or avoid using it altogether. Limitations that you must know: AI cannot think like humans. Okay. It finds patterns in data but does not truly understand its meaning. AI cannot make ethical decisions on its own. Humans must decide what is right. AI struggles with rare or unusual situations that it's never encountered during training. AI cannot access real time information unless you give it that data. Now, that varies on the paid tiers and Gemini has access to the internet, but yeah, what all real time information does it have? And AI cannot explain its reasoning the way that a person can. Knowing these limits keeps you from relying on AI for tasks that it's not suited for, like making life-changing decisions alone. So you probably don't want to ask it, should I marry this person? Should I divorce this person? Okay. Um, should I start this new job? Should I quit this job? Ethics, your responsibility as an AI user. Ethics means thinking carefully about right and wrong when you build or use AI. Because it just said AI doesn't have that right or wrong. So of course we're the person that we're the human element in this and checking. So we have a responsibility to consider how our work affects others. So could the AI application that you have and you create and put data in, could it hurt someone? Could it discriminate? Will it invade privacy? Could it spread false information? And who benefits and who loses? These questions take time but are not optional. They are part of professional AI work. Every choice you make either builds or damages trust in AI systems. This comes big into thinking how some of the AI systems were made where they were very strict on what you could create and not. And you remember Grok was allowing people to, like, the safeguards were off. So people were able to make deep fakes of people and have like nude images and stuff of people and thing. And they got in a lawsuit for class action of people like minors being presented, even if they were not real, but bodies that were created that were minors in like pornography, things like that. And this was a novel situation that never existed before, right? So you have to say, is this something that's illegal before if it's not a real person? And then you have people can make stuff that's fake for blackmail, right? Where it could be a video, so it could be a deep fake that's not even it could be, well, here's Devin robbing this bank, right? And it's like it's not you, but AI making the video that looks like you. And so that definitely comes into ethics when they allow stuff like that to be created. Can definitely damage reputations. People could spend time having to fight the legality of it if they're having to show it wasn't them. And then the trust that it hurts in those AI systems. A lot of people talk negatively about Grok because of that. And Grok's the one tied in with XAI, okay, South Haven, the project that we mentioned, everything. I think in response to that, they've added safeguards to it because they didn't even seem concerned at the last meeting I was in with Grok, and they didn't bring that up. So I'm hoping that they've addressed that um, to limit what people could create and what they couldn't create. Then transparency, being honest about what an AI can and cannot do. Making sure that users, when they're using a tool, know that they're talking to an AI and not a human. So kind of like those chatbots that pop up, they make them pretty personal. And when somebody sees that somebody hasn't used one before and it pops up and says, "Hey, I'm Chuck" or something, right? You might think that this is some guy maybe named Charles or Chuck, and not realizing that it's not really a human. And so it's good to be able to see when it's an AI tool and just display that. We also see the ads that we see on TV. I've mentioned like the Coca-Cola one I saw the other day, one that all the ad was generated by AI. A lot of times they'll put at the bottom of the screen that this ad was generated by AI, and that it might have imperfections. Well, it's nice when they add stuff like that in. That way people know when it's real and when it's not, and it was just used for creative purposes. Explain if decisions are made by AI and let people ask for human review. Share limitations openly instead of hiding them, and document your data sources and acknowledge bias risks. When AI makes a mistake, admit it and fix it. And transparency is not weakness, it's how professionals build confidence in their work. So I mean, they could show you when they have all the different models coming out of what's better and what they fixed before, like ChatGPT now is like at the five something. You see those numbers go up, and the is it at 5.4 or whatnot? What are the new features? What's better this go around? You start talking about what are the limitations of, hey, this one's not suited for this task as well as another. So for responsible AI practice, your next steps use AI as a tool to help humans, not to replace human judgment in important decisions. Always question data quality and where it came from. Involve diverse teams when building AI to catch bias earlier. Test your AI on different groups and situations before using it widely. Stay curious about AI's limitations and keep learning. By following these practices, you become an ethical AI practitioner who can make a positive difference. So, the guided build for identifying bias and limitations in an AI system was to choose a real AI system you know, such as TikTok recommendation algorithm, Google Maps, Netflix, other video services, or a chatbot. Write down its name on paper or typing in the chat and spend 2 to 3 minutes using this AI system and observe what it does. Take notes on the results or recommendations that it gives you, and then ask yourself, could this AI treat different groups of people unfairly? And write one example. For instance, does it assume things about you based on your age, location, or past behavior?
Well, I have noticed that chat will do. Chat would actually respond in a way, I guess, is picking up the regional vibe,
Mm-hmm.
uh, things that are colloquial to your region, like because it is fully where I'm from, Tupelo, Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed that some of its answers, even politically, because the Republicans are in the lead, a lot of the talking points that sometimes it will give me is Republican.
Right.
Um, I can tell religious wise when you talk about getting off answers or something that's inaccurate. Well, religious wise, I've noticed that it would give me something that's popular among the Southern Baptists. Oh,
Right.
there's a new subject, and I'm like, okay, yeah, but they ain't what the Bible say.
Yeah.
And I literally had to take it back and show it. This is what the Bible actually said. This is what they're saying. And like the median groups and all them, the Mennonites and all them, you got to think about they popular in this area. So guess what? They take some of their stuff and put it back. It will put it back out. So I've
Mm-hmm.
noticed that it does do something regional. So I'm kind of wondering how would it react if I was in a place like Inglewood, Haywood, or Oaktown, and in places like that. Like, so what does exactly pick up then and tell me now?
Mm-hmm.
Because honestly, it's right here. It just tells me kind of the most popular groups. Because I mean, I could be speaking about that. It starts sounding like some MAGA stuff real fast. Like, whoa, whoa,
Yeah,
like,
so because you said based on your area and it is a more Republican or got the vote. And
yeah.
so, yeah, then that leads into it. So then you have to put in for your own outputs when you're creating things, you would have to correct it and say, maybe if you did want to say you were more on certain things conservative and more liberal on other things, you might not want to speak in absolute, and to give it a better idea. And then with that's a good, and this fits for this, section good that you're talking about, like using your chat GPT and everything. And so it had bias in the area, right, for politics of who the group is, and just made that assumption. And then on religion, the assumption of Southern Baptists for the South, right? And then your area, another group, the Mennonites. So then you had to tell it. So that would be the way to, like, how do you correct it with feedback? If you're going more by, you want to make sure everything's scripture based, you're saying, hey, if it's not in here, we're not adding it.
And that was kind of funny because it will. I tell you, this is another funny one I actually did. So I actually put in there, give me what is common around here for African American churches. And it's pretty accurate.
It
And
probably
it
it,
was
pro-
literal.
it probably has it's not ending at 12.
And it'll put, and what it actually put down there? I said, give them this lesson and do it for African American audience. And it'll put on there hoop here, hoop cadence.
What's a what's that?
When we get in, and oh Lord.
That's what that's called.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's called hooping. That's our hooping.
Hoop cadence. I knew that
Yeah,
it would pick up on repetition as a big thing on saying something
and
again and
and,
again.
and it will go through a record for hoops, and it will literal come back and tell you this is where you need to start hooping it, and it will actually say elevate your voice here, let your voice die here, rest here. It will tell you honestly how to do a sermon as like you was in a black church,
Hmm.
and you just like wow.
Yes, and it would be a powerful tool if you were wanting it to follow that culture and saying that that is what you lined up with and that's what you wanted. It would be good at showing that. But then for if you weren't intending that and then it was using bias based on what it knows of certain cultures and everything, that's when you have to be like, whoa, I'm not following that, you know.
Uh-huh.
And is it more lined up with is it more of a traditional service, you know, versus more contemporary? So yeah, those are the type of things you could go in and tweak it, you know, to where it's giving you more accurate output. So yeah, in that example, we see it would treat different groups of people not necessarily unfairly. They're just getting more. It gave you an accurate example, you said, but maybe that's not what you were having in your church if it wasn't. And then it's
Yeah.
showing you that this is how the service is going to go, just based on what was inferred.
Well, that's why I was going back to asking, at what point is it kind of violating our privacy? Like it had to go through a YouTube file. It had to go through somebody's file to get that information
Yeah, pictures
and
of
to be
services
accurate.
of what's going on,
It's
videos that were
pre-recorded.
on YouTube and stuff.
You got
Yeah.
all these services and stuff. How does it do that? Something you mentioned earlier about image generated advertisement. Well,
Hmm.
what about this? I ran into this, and I hear folks talking about it. Um, what is it? Because it's real popular on Instagram right now. Instagram model that's created by you just mentioned Grok did that.
Oh yeah, having models and stuff that aren't real, yeah, and they could be like influencers and things like that. Yeah, that we're getting into, yeah, what are the ethics on it? Can you have that? Because you could have an account right and get paid by that person right that's being an influencer that's not real, you know, that's getting enough people following them, you know. So it's like, okay, is it allowed? Is it not? What are the
Mhm.
restrictions?
And then I heard where several states around here has they're now collecting your information, your license, and everything before you get on certain sites.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, what is that? Some I think is YOTI,
Hmm.
and then there's several other. I mean, they go through collect all your license information, and everything.
Yeah, yeah, you probably don't want
You
to
know,
probably
site.
don't want to use that one then. So of course, limitations of the AI, in the discussion that you were having, thinking about that, like the task that it might fail at. A big one in that context was if you were going to get it to help you write a sermon or whatever, we know that it's just going by patterns of what has been in sermons that it's seen throughout history and then predicting the next word. But we know it's not possible for the AI to have spiritual understanding, right? And for it to actually understand the scripture. So it's just mimicking what you would think a popular sermon is. Now, using it as a tool, yeah, it might happen to come up with some good points or things that you could use. You're still going to have to keep it on the not just the human element, but going over and looking at it for the spiritual element. Okay, we that covered the thing. So you'll do your lab since it's almost lunch. You'll have this lab and workshop. which will add to the portfolio artifact. And then be sure to read over everyone the best practices and your reflection journal to complete that. And that will end lesson 7. Let me stop this stream.